The letter was never supposed to surface. A restricted dossier sealed for more than 10 years, hidden away in a long-forgotten vault at Quantico. No heading, no rank, no ceremony, only a single codename pressed in faded ink across its surface. Iron Wolf. For years, nobody knew who the name pointed to until someone cracked it open. And the moment they did, nothing remained the same. Before we dive in, if you believe respect should be earned instead of mocked, hit like, subscribe, and share where you're watching from. Because once the call sign Iron Wolf is spoken in this tale from military stories, the air grows still, the room freezes, and everything shifts forever. The dawn at Fort Redstone carried a biting chill, the quiet heavy with expectation. This was where future Marine leaders were forged, a place where discipline wasn't asked for, it was imposed. And yet Sarah Whitaker, standing alone at the far edge of the yard, felt a silence that wasn't honor, but judgment. Late 20s, reserved, steady, a fresh transfer from the medic corps. Her attire gleamed, her boots shone like mirrors, her stance exact. But no polish could mask the whispers that clung to her. A few cadets smirked when they passed. Others didn't bother lowering their voices. Why is she even here? Probably begged for entry. Medics don't belong in command school. She stood still, hands locked behind her, eyes ahead. Yet every laugh, every sly glance, every barb she absorbed in silence. Then appeared Lieutenant Blake Morgan, 26, self-assured, dripping with the arrogance built into him from day one. He walked like command was his by birthright, not effort. He halted just short of her, his smirk like a blade's edge. Transfer? Sergeant Whitaker, she corrected flatly, eyes unmoved. Not here, Morgan shot back. Here, you're just another cadet trying to keep pace. The group behind him chuckled. One muttered about medics playing soldier. Another scoffed that she probably earned her spot with pity points. Sarah didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't react, but her stillness wasn't weakness. Because Sarah Whitaker knew long ago that the loudest in a room usually had the least worth saying. By nightfall, the whispers hardened into open mockery. In the locker room, Morgan leaned on a bench, retelling the morning's exchange to eager ears. "She corrected me," he said, mocking her in a shrill tone. "Sergeant Whitaker!" He barked a laugh, drawing more from the pack. "Bet she can't even strip a rifle without searching it online," one scoffed. "She'll wash out in a week," another chimed in. At the far end, Sarah unlaced her boots, calm, deliberate. She stayed pliant. She didn't argue. Yet one cadet saw what the rest ignored. Corporal Nena Taus, sharp and watchful, caught how Sarah folded her uniform with care into her locker. As she did, a small, worn patch slipped out and hit the floor. Nena snatched it up before anyone else noticed. Her gaze locked on the stitching. 3 words, black thread on faded gray. Iron Wolf Unit. Her breath caught. The phrase stirred something faintly familiar, like whispers from a late briefing or a story overheard that she wasn't supposed to hear. She slipped it back discreetly. Sarah accepted it without a word, tucked it into her jacket, locked the door, and left without a glance back. 2 weeks crawled by, and the joke sharpened. Morgan made sure of it. During a morning combat drill, he raised his voice for all to hear. "Careful out there, Whitaker," he jeered. "Wouldn't want those medic hands bruised." Laughter rolled across the field. Sarah ignored it as always, but Nina, watching from the side, caught something off. Sarah wasn't watching Morgan or their jokes. Her eyes kept sweeping the ridgeline above the course, narrowing slightly. That evening, long after drills ended, Sarah walked the perimeter alone. Her boots crunched the gravel as her hand brushed along the cold fence. She paused where the trees pressed near, gaze fixed on a corner camera high on its post. Earlier, it had flickered. Just 1.7 seconds. Almost nobody would have noticed, but Sarah did. She pulled a battered notebook from her pocket, scribbled something down, and moved on. Later that evening, while most cadets filled the mess hall, the strategy room was arranged for a briefing. Rows of recruits packed the seats, their chatter low and restless. Lieutenant Blake Morgan lounged at the front, legs crossed, that smug grin never leaving his face. Then, as the lights dimmed, the projector froze mid-screen. A low chime rang through the hall. A sudden notification appeared across the instructor's console. Restricted access. Login authorization code, Iron Wolf, Ein. A ripple of unease spread across the recruits. The instructor frowned, tapping keys to override, but the system refused to budge. Then Sarah's tablet, sitting untouched on her desk, buzzed once. She glanced down. One new message. No sender, no subject. Just 4 words glowing on the display. Iron Wolf, stand by. Her hand froze mid-air, pulse quickening in her chest. Across the aisle, Nina Torres caught the faint flash of text. Her eyes widened, lips parting as realization slowly crept across her features. Iron Wolf. She didn't fully know what it meant, not precisely, but she knew one thing with certainty. Sarah Whitaker was no ordinary cadet. Somewhere, someone had just summoned her back. Hours later, long past lights out, Sarah sat cross-legged on her bunk in silence. Her notebook lay open across her lap, filled with scrawled coordinates, times, and patterns, the kind of details no one else seemed to catch. She turned to the latest page, her pen tracing over the words she had written. Iron Wolf, 01, authorization active. She closed the book carefully, slid it under her pillow, and leaned against the wall. Outside, a biting wind rattled the windows. Deep in the facility, encrypted servers processed the override command, firing alerts into networks far above Fort Redstone's clearance. Miles away, inside a sealed operations center, a man in a pressed uniform bent over his glowing console as the alert filled his screen. Colonel James Roordon. He froze, jaw tight, fingers curling into a fist. The words blinked once before vanishing into locked encryption. Iron Wolf protocol reactivated. For a long moment, he stood silent. Then, almost like a vow spoken to ghosts, he muttered, Iron Wolf activated. With that, he grabbed his cap and strode from the room without hesitation. Because whenever that codename resurfaced, it meant one thing. Someone at Fort Redstone had no idea who they were mocking, but they were about to learn. The signal was sent, the protocols were alive again, and in the dead of night, unseen wheels began to turn, far beyond anything the cadets could imagine. By morning, the atmosphere on base was different. The air weighed heavier. Conversations once light with jokes now carried a nervous edge. In the training hall, cadets slid into their rows, their voices hushed but uneasy. Yet Lieutenant Blake Morgan appeared untouched. Guess the medic's tricks already, he announced smugly. Probably hacked the system for attention. A few uneasy chuckles followed, but the laughter was thin. Sarah Whitaker sat calmly at the rear, her posture composed. Her expression revealed nothing. Nina looked back. Sarah, last night, the message. Sarah didn't reply. Then the lights flickered once, twice, and the hall went black. The outage lasted only 7 seconds, but when the lights flared back, something had changed. The monitors glowed with a new notification. Call James Roordon, inbound. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Measured, heavy, intentional. The double doors swung open. Colonel James Roordon stepped inside. Late 40s, broad-shouldered, decorated. Silence swallowed the room. His gaze swept across the cadets before locking on one person, Sarah Whitaker. For the first time since arriving, Sarah shifted, not in fear, but recognition. Roordon approached. Iron Wolf, he said, voice low, rolling like distant thunder. Stand by. Confusion rippled through the hall. Sergeant Sarah Whitaker, Roordon commanded, front and center. She rose. Every movement sharp, disciplined, precise. As she reached him, his tone softened by a fraction. Good to see you again, Iron Wolf. Gasps shot across the rows. Morgan stared, stunned. "This some kind of joke?" he blurted. "She's just a medic, a transfer." Roordon turned slowly, his gaze cutting like steel. "Lieutenant," he said coldly, "at ease. You've said enough." Morgan's smirk crumbled. Roordon let the silence breathe before speaking again. "You think you know who trains beside you? You think rank and ribbons tell the story? You haven't a clue who she is." The hall held its breath. 7 years ago, he continued, a covert team executed an unsanctioned rescue during Dawson Ridge. 12 Marines were trapped. Standard extraction failed. Mission declared lost. He paused, eyes never leaving Sarah. Then a single operator, callsign Iron Wolf, led a 4-person squad straight into hostile ground. No air support, no reinforcements, no chance. He drew in a slow breath. 47 minutes later, every Marine walked free. A stunned hush settled. "She didn't inherit that name," Roordon said. "She carved it." He stepped closer. "And she saved my life." Shock rippled through the room. Morgan's face drained of color. I didn't know," he stammered. Roordon's voice cooled to ice. "Exactly. You never asked." Then he addressed the room. "From this point on, you will address her properly. Sergeant Sarah Whitaker, Iron Wolf Unit. And if you believe this is about rank," his eyes hardened, "then you are not ready to lead Marines." Slowly, a cadet stood at the back and saluted. Then another. And another. Within seconds, the entire hall rose in perfect, unified salute. For the first time, Sarah Whitaker stood revealed, not the medic they mocked, but Iron Wolf. Roordon leaned in. "They see it now," he murmured, "but this isn't about them." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Then who is it about?" His voice dropped. "Someone's watching this pace, someone who shouldn't be." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Then it starts again," she whispered. Roordon nodded once. "Welcome back, Iron Wolf." That night, rain hammered Fort Redstone. Sarah sat on the edge of her bunk, staring at her encrypted tablet. 4 words pulsed on the screen.
"Iron Wolf, stand by." Before she could respond, alarms exploded across the compound. "Breach detected, west perimeter." But moments later, a frantic officer cried out, "Sir, sensors show internal movement. They're already inside." Roordon's eyes flicked to Sarah. "South wing, take Torres, move." Sarah grabbed her sidearm and sprinted. Shadows twisted in the flickering emergency lights. A disturbed vent panel. A scuff of a boot behind them. "Step out," Sarah barked. A black-clad figure lunged into motion. Nina fired, missed, and the intruder bolted. Sarah chased, sprinting through the lower maintenance wing until she skidded to a stop. A device blinked on the main security panel. She ripped it off, examining it, and froze. This wasn't foreign tech. It was U.S. military issue. Someone inside had authorized the breach. By dawn, the infiltrators were gone, leaving only questions. "This wasn't an attack," Sarah said, dropping the device on the table. "They weren't here to destroy anything." Roordon nodded grimly. "They were testing us." Morgan stepped forward, the arrogance gone. I didn't know," he whispered. Sarah's gaze didn't waver. "Now you do." As dawn broke over Fort Redstone, she stood beneath the rain-soaked awning. Iron Wolf was awake again. Someone out there wanted to test her, wanted to see if she'd forgotten who she was. They were mistaken. Sarah Whitaker wasn't there to fit in. She wasn't there to impress. She was there to lead. And now the entire base knew exactly who she was. Iron Wolf.